Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, Dr Blade Nzimande, says under Level 3, only a third of students will be allowed back on campus, with final year students being prioritized. Nzimande made the announcement during a media briefing on measures his department is taking in response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Under Level 3, which has not yet been announced, but when this level gets announced, we are going to allow a maximum of 33% of the student population to return to campuses, delivery sites and residences on condition that they can be safely accommodated and supported in line with the health and safety protocols as directed by the Department of Health and indeed our department as well, where appropriate. This will include the following cohorts or group of students who will form part of this 33%. It will be all groups that have already returned during Level 4, as I have outlined. But then also we will then prioritize students in the final year of their programs who are on a path to graduating if they finish their 2020 academic year completely. Also, amongst this group, the first 33% will be final year students who require access to laboratories, technical equipment, data, connectivity, and access to residence and private accommodation will also be allowed to return to be part of this first 33% at Level 3. Students in all years of study will also be allowed to return if they require clinical training in their programs, provided that the clinical training platforms have sufficient space and can accommodate them while adhering to the safety protocols, especially physical distance and maintenance of personal hygiene. The other group of students that we will allow under Level 3 to go back as part of this 33% will be postgraduate students who require laboratory equipment and other technical equipment to undertake their studies. In addition to the above, institutions may also consider selected return of other categories of students to residencies who may face extreme difficulties in their home learning environments, provided that the above categories are prioritized and all safety and logistical requirements are met.
So as you saw there, the Higher Education and Training Department announcing a staggered return to campus based on different lockdown levels at different districts. The minister, you saw there speaking, saying that a third of university and TVET students may return to campus. Well, let's talk a little bit more about some of these announcements. We with our reporter Mahlako Komane for the latest on this. Mahlako, I want to start with the priorities. So the minister is saying at some stage first year students will be prioritized, but we're to understand that at the moment it is last year students. Are there priorities within that category? As in, are there subcategories which would be considered first?
Yes, good afternoon, good evening rather, Tsepiso. You'd understand, I think, what would seem, and I think hasn't changed from the 30th of April, is students in the so-called critical skills, specifically speaking to final year students within, the sciences, specifically, I think, the health sciences, and other final year students that will need your laboratories. They need to actually be physically on campus to be able to continue and finish their studies for the 2020 academic year. But also, I also heard the minister saying that within all these levels, they'll definitely be prioritizing students with living with disabilities. These were also students that I think will also get priorities in terms of that staggered return to campuses. And obviously speaking that within, when we go back to level 3, when we go to level 3, that 33% of student population will be allowed, provided that they can obviously meet what he calls those physical distancing criteria and other criteria. This is also open to student residences. And also, I think he also just mentioned as well the time frames that students will be given. Obviously, a lot of students not necessarily studying within the same province, they don't live in the same provinces that they study in, saying that there'll be a 2 to 3 week, don't call it a grace period, but a period within students will be expected to be back on their various campuses at all the various levels that may be announced. And also, I think he also spoke about there certain perhaps metros or districts that will not move down to level 3, that in that particular case, or where they see perhaps that the situation is dire, those will remain closed. I think quite a well-crafted approach, and I think quite careful in terms of not just opening up the sector and also just exposing students to this virus. And I mean, the minister had also said that while they do want to save the academic year, what is important for them and what is critical is to ensure that they save lives, that yes, the academic year should be saved, but never at the expense of students' lives.
And I want to talk about that, Mahlako, that even though when districts will announce when schools will reopen, we will also see a 3-week delay in people actually going back. So the announcement has to be made first in your district, and then there's a 3-week delay before you can actually return to campus.
Yes, I think he explained the delay. He says 2 to 3 weeks. He says institutions are not equal across the country. I mean, we know that historically some have more muscle than others. So what will happen is some may need 2 weeks. They may be able to fulfill those criteria within the 2 weeks that are stipulated in accordance to the various levels that people find themselves in. And I think that is what I think informs the time frames. But yes, he was also at pains to say that where there is a problem, where there are challenges in terms of how the virus is affecting a particular metro, a particular community, that would also be taken into consideration. So it's not just, he's just going to open, the gates that it's one for all and all for one. But I think the situation will be read according to what is happening on the ground. But also, I think the minister also quite, he also just went in and he also said that what they will definitely do is that should the situation change, yes, we may be in level 3, and should situations change within a particular environment that institution may find themselves, they will not hesitate to pull out students and instruct students to go back home should the situation demand that type of action.
So I want to talk about the seaters, Mahlako, before we get to the issue of data. Funding seems to have been something that's been raised as problematic.
Yes, I think it's not necessarily only the seaters, but when you also, I mean, we were out earlier on in Komhlanga, in Mpumalanga, and we spoke to students that are at the CN Mahlangu TVET College in Siyabuswa, and they are saying that for them, historically, they have challenges with funding, and that would come from the NSFAS. But the minister, in his opening of the speech that he gave today, is saying that students that have qualified for NSFAS have been receiving funding irrespective of the fact that institutions have been closed. But also went on, I think it was Deputy Minister Manamela also saying that where money has been paid in terms of the NSFAS to institutions as well as accommodation places, that is for services rendered, and students will receive those services that which the scheme has paid for. But I think they seem to also be challenges within the seaters as well that also speak directly to funding. People saying that they're not getting the funding that is due to them. So I think quite a lot that we would definitely have to look into in terms of what is it that's going on the ground, because perhaps maybe the minister has a different picture from what is actually happening to students, because students seeming to tell a very different story from what we are officially hearing.
Let's talk about the 10 gigabyte, 20 gigabyte of data that's being offered to students.
Yes, he then said that NSFAS students as well as the Funza Rushaka students, these are our students that are pursuing Bachelor of Education, saying that they will be receiving that 10 gigabytes as well at any time, and 20. The minister said that this was a favourable arrangement or agreement between his department as well as the cell phone network providers. Also saying that I think this was to assist in terms of online learning, as you'd understand that not everybody is going to make it to campus at the same, go back to for contact learning at the same time. And also I think he says this is the second time, obviously he says this, that let students not use this for other things either than for pursuing their academic programs where they, where they cannot, they are not able to access what they need academically in terms of other sites that are non-fee paying sites where you are able to access those sites without having data. But he also spoke about the delivery of subject content to students. I think that was another another way how they will continue teaching students. He spoke about that. And I also spoke to some registrars, and I think they're also saying that what they then also did in their institutions is they would put material on the USB, so a student does not have to find themselves having to access the internet if they cannot, especially in very remote areas where connectivity poses quite a challenge. But I think the provision of the data speaking to those issues of connectivity as well as online learning. But we know that some institutions, hence earlier on said that institutions are not the same in terms of financial muscle. For example, Wits University giving some of their students or most of their students data to ensure that they're able to access online learning.
Thank you very much, SABC reporter Mahlako Komane.